on-off button.
Okay, with that, good evening, everyone. I'd like to open the regular Planning Commission meeting for May 25th, 2022. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Abbey.
Here.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Farkas.
Here.
Commissioner McCarthy.
Here.
Commissioner Zucker.
Here.
Vice Chair Lagerquist.
Here.
Chair Comden.
Here. Thank you. Let's move to public communications. This is the time set aside during the committee meetings for members of the public to address the committee on planning-related businesses other than scheduled agenda items. Madam Clerk, do we have speakers tonight?
I don't have any public speakers not wishing to speak on, during public comment.
Okay, very good. Let's move on to consent items. We need to approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes for March 23rd of this year. Do I have a, yes, please.
I'd like to move the minutes of March 23rd.
Very good. Anyone second?
I have some corrections to make on
Please
the
do.
minutes.
Let us know, Commissioner.
The minutes concern a meeting I was not at, and on a number of the motions, it states me as being absent, but I'm not listed as being absent. There are two sections on all the motions where it states who's absent and it lists them, and it's just inconsistent. The reporting of my absence is inconsistent in some of the motions. I think that should be corrected.
Okay. Is staff clear on that?
Yes, we
Okay.
can make those adjustments.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. With that, would someone like to second it? Okay, Commissioner Farkas. Madam Clerk, would you take the roll, please?
Commissioner Abbey,
Yes?
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Farkas,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarty,
Abstain.
Commissioner Zucker,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lagerquist,
Yes.
Chair Comden.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good. Let's move on to our formal items. Item 2 here, Project 15323, the Del Sol Design Review, warrants, exceptions, etc. Staff, are you ready for your presentation?
I have
Yes.
disclosures.
Oh, yes, please.
So I do have a disclosure on this. 8 years ago, I worked on the environmental permitting of the Branca improvements. I did the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, California Department of Fish and Game, Water Board, and Army Corps of Engineer permits. I had no part in the specific plan, and I'm past the timeline for recusing myself. I just want to be fully transparent that I have history with this project and know a lot about it. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And on that note, have there been any ex parte communications by anyone else on the commission? Okay, very good. Let's move on to staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. The current item on the agenda is a request for a major design review, warrants, exceptions, and lot line adjustments for a large residential development. The project site is located southwest of Wells Road between Blackburn and Telegraph Roads. It is currently vacant and wholly within the Parklands specific plan, which was adopted by Ventura City Council in 2009. Nearby projects include the farm to the southwest, outlined in orange, and Parklands Phase 1, also known as Parklands Apartments, to the northeast, outlined in yellow. The history of the Del Sol project includes initial land entitlements in the form of the Parklands Specific Plan, which was adopted by Council in 2009, a recorded subdivision map that provides the layout of streets and alleys, a developer agreement, and a letter from the city manager clarifying aspects of the developer agreement. The site was purchased within recent years by the applicant team from developer John Ashkar. An initial project application was submitted in October of last year. The proposed project is for phases 2 and 3 and landscaping for phases 2, 3, and 4 of the Parklands specific plan. The surrounding area has a mix of commercial uses along Citrus Drive and Wells Road, including 2 gas stations, a post office, a Jack in the Box fast food restaurant, and Cafe 126. Residential uses consist of multifamily uses as well as single-family uses located along both Wells and Telegraph Roads. A mobile home park and single-family homes are located along Blackburn Road. The Farm and Parklands Phase 1 projects are some of the most recent residential developments near the project site to have been built. Parklands Phase 1, like the Del Sol project before the Planning Commission today, is wholly within the Parklands specific plan. Last month, the Design Review Committee reviewed this project for major design review. Members of the public spoke at the hearing, and also written comments were provided. Comments were centered on how the proposed building designs will relate to the existing Parklands apartments in Phase 1. The DRC was generally supportive of the various building designs that the applicant team presented, as well as landscaping designs, and forwarded the design recommendation to consider use of another material other than vinyl for windows on a 3-0 vote. Staff added a condition of approval requiring a material other than vinyl for windows. Del Sol consists of 89 multifamily residential units in the form of townhomes, 112 single-family homes, a recreation center, park space, and new streets on a 38-acre site. As a disclaimer, the staff report stated incorrectly the floor area and height of units. The correct floor area of units are as follows. Single-family houses range between 2,023 square feet and 3,516 square feet. The townhome units range in area between 1,654 square feet and 1,872 square feet. All units are 2 stories in height. The street layout and location of public park space is currently fixed by the Parkland specific plan and the recorded subdivision map. Given this, they cannot be modified or they cannot be changed substantially. The site proposes an urban form of development consisting of short to moderate block lengths, a grid street network, and alley access for all townhome units and most single-family houses. Units orient to new public streets and park space. Townhome units are located along the edge of phases 2 and 3 on the screen toward the upper portions of the screen, as well as along the edge of phase 3. Single-family houses are located in the interior of phases 2 and 3, as well as along the perimeter of phase 3, adjacent to an existing neighborhood. Open space is provided in the form of public park space with amenities and a recreation center, and centrally located on the site. And just as a reminder to the Planning Commission, Phase 4 is before you for landscaping only. The applicant team intends to come back in the future for a build out of Phase 4. Architectural expression of this project is accompanied through a mix of styles and building types that reflect the Mediterranean, craftsman, and beach cottage architectural styles, which are required by the Parkland specific plan. A sample of the various designs are shown on the screen. Spanish, Gill, and Monterey styles, as provided by the applicant, incorporate shared elements of the Mediterranean architectural style through use of roofing material, stucco, decorative tile accents, arches, and braces as architectural detail. Del Sol proposes building designs similar to the Craftsman style through horizontally patterned fiber cement shingle siding, shallow sloped and gabled roof forms, and details such as faux rafter tails. Elements of the beach cottage architectural style are also proposed for some single-family houses and the recreation center. Elements include walls clad in painted vertical siding, wooden posts with accent color porches, and windows that orient vertically and are divided into equal increments. Landscaping for phases 2 and 3 and 4 is designed to serve as a unifying element for this project. Native trees are proposed along each public street, around the brown barranca, and are interspersed throughout the site. Plantings for Del Sol have been selected on the basis of aridity and drought tolerance. Plantings in yard areas fronting on public streets are appropriate to the scale and orientation of all units within this development. Proposed species include sweet gum, London plane, paradise pear, boxwood, red yucca, and natal plum. Approximately 1,600 plantings are proposed for phases 2, 3, and 4. Requested lot line adjustments are for consolidation of lots 34 and 35 into a new lot known as Lot 34A. Consolidation of lots 131, 132, and 133 into new lot 131A. and a lot line shift between lots 119 and 268. These proposed lot line adjustments are minimal and do not substantially change the recorded subdivision map. The Parkland specific plan requires new construction to meet 3 different sets of standards. Urban standards deal with setbacks, parking, and building height. Building type standards deal with how and where buildings are accessed, open space requirements, and how height and massing are distributed. Frontage type standards deal with size, configuration, and specific elements of street-facing facades of buildings. Staff notes that the staff report stated this project triggers 11 exceptions and 3 warrants. However, this project actually triggers 11 warrants and 3 exceptions to the standards of the plan throughout the project site on various lots. These warrants and exceptions are primarily related to open space, while others relate to building setback, building height, building encroachment, window, and car garage requirements. In total, the proposed project complies with 69 out of 83 required and recommended standards of the Parkland specific plan. Exhibit C attached to the staff report in tonight's agenda lists each lot and corresponding warrants and exceptions. Overall, this project complies overwhelmingly with the majority of the Parkland specific plan standards, except for the 14 standards as mentioned in the staff report, which require warrants and exceptions. Given the aforementioned, staff recommends the Planning Commission approve the major design review, warrants, exceptions, and lot line adjustments as conditioned, and this concludes staff's presentation. Staff will welcome questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Burse. Commissioners, do you have questions for staff? Commissioner McCarty.
Thank you for a good presentation, Gene. A question regarding the DRC recommendation for higher quality windows. What's the status of that, or has there been any movement toward assuring that that will happen, or do you know?
Thank you, Chair Comden, Commissioner McCarty. The applicant tonight is going to touch on that as they would like to use vinyl windows for their project. We have put a condition of approval in the resolution itself requiring the review of a better quality other than vinyl material when we do the building permit plan review. So with that condition, when they get to the building permit phase, they are to incorporate a different standard for window detail and design into their plans for review and approval. However, the applicant's going to discuss that further and why they would like to use vinyl.
Okay, thank you.
On that, I have a quick question.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Commissioner Farkas, and then
Only because
Abby.
it goes off of that. The farm, which is adjacent, well, not adjacent, but close, what type of windows did they have in their building?
Thank you, Commissioner Farkas. I'm not sure. We'd have to look into what materials they used for that. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Or actually, they would also, like, what did Phase 1 use of their project?
right, that was a good question.
They already did Phase 1, so that would be good to know as well.
We don't have either piece of that information this evening.
Although you may be able to, the applicant should be able to tell that, and the photos of the existing Phase 1, you might be able to tell by sight.
It would be hard to distinguish just from photos.
Yeah.
And the developer, Shea Homes, did not construct the first phase of Parkland, so they may
I
not
see.
be aware it was a different developer.
Okay, very good.
We can try and see if we can look it up, but that would require a bit of research.
Okay. Commissioner Abbey.
Let's see, regarding plantings, Gene, did the DRC make any comments on the recommended plants?
DRC did not provide comments specifically in their recommendation regarding landscaping for this project.
Do you know if the DRC has a landscaper on it? I noticed it was a 3-0 vote, and DRC has supposed to have up to 5 members. Is there a landscaper on the DRC currently?
There is not a landscape architect on the board right now.
Okay. I was wondering regarding the edge, the western edge of this project, where it abuts the mobile home park and the other homes on the western edge. Could we see a graphic, and could you describe to me, please, what heights of homes we're talking about on that western edge?
So along the western edge of this property, of the site, as of right now, on the screen where the mobile home park is located, that is currently slated for Phase 4, which is not part of this current submittal. However, the homes moving further north along that street, which I believe is Linden Drive, South Linden Drive, there are approximately 18 homes within that existing neighborhood. And so with this project, for that part of Phase 3, the homes would be currently are proposed to go up to 2 stories in height. The maximum height of each home per the Parkland specific plan will be capped at 28 feet. And as of right now, that particular portion of the Parkland site has an existing overlay, which is why one of the deviations that the applicant team is requesting is regarding height. That caps height to 1.5 stories. However, it still allows the maximum building to go up to 28 feet.
And I understand Phase 4 is not being considered right now, although the landscaping is. Are they thinking that, you may not be able to answer this question, when the builder comes up later, I'd be interested to see what their thinking is regarding heights next to the mobile home park. Okay. I had a question regarding extreme hardship. I saw in the report where there were warrants and exceptions due to extreme hardship. And I did talk to a staff member earlier today, and I was appreciative of the information that I received. But I was wondering how staff justifies, I saw the report and I read it, and I was just wondering how staff justifies some of the exceptions and warrants being due to extreme hardship, because the reason I ask is because findings have to be made, and the finding says that it has to be due to extreme hardship, or at least that's one of the findings that has to be made.
Thank you, Commissioner Abbey, and please feel free to chime in if you need to, Meg. We did put findings in there for the exceptions that we believe that meet defending the hardship request for those requests. Now, if the Planning Commission believes that the exceptions and warrants that the applicant is requesting you don't agree with or don't believe should be granted, that's one thing, but we can make the finding in either regard. The specific plan itself is a older specific plan, I believe 2008, 2009, when it was adopted, and it laid the framework and the subdivision for where the lots were going to be. Since some time has passed since then, the developer, Shea Homes, would like to make some adjustments to the buildings themselves. Trends and patterns have changed in what homeowners are looking for now, and they're making adjustments like wider porches or shifting the building positioning itself on those lots. We believe that's reasonable given how much time has passed and things are a lot different now in what homeowners are looking to buy, and they are looking to create a product that resonates with the market today. And so we believe it's a reasonable request. We don't believe that the warrants and exceptions that they are requesting are unreasonable or would make a significant difference, meaning if one property owner next to another property owner who had an exception or warrant on their property McCarty, they would probably not even tell the difference of what the changes were. So given that, we think that they're reasonable, and we believe we can make the findings to support it if the Planning Commission is amenable to the exceptions and warrants.
Okay. And then I had a question that applies to this project, but just to projects in general regarding findings. With the new PSO, Permanent Streamlining Ordinance, I was just noticing that on findings, I didn't see any wording in the report, maybe I just missed it, regarding warrants are, it used to be the standard was warrants are discouraged and exceptions are strongly discouraged. And I understand at Planning Commission, when we were voting on it, we changed the exception for exceptions to discouraged rather than strongly discouraged. But I don't know, Mr. Gilly, what happened at City Council and whether or not those findings still have to be made. I didn't see that verbiage.
As part of the streamlining ordinance, council adopted the staff recommended streamlining ordinance without any of the changes that the Planning Commission asked for on a unanimous vote.
Okay, so the standard under PSO is no longer warrants are discouraged, exceptions are strongly discouraged. It's just silent on that now?
The language in warrants and exceptions in the specific plans that had that, I wouldn't call it a standard per se, but the language is now not in the plans.
Okay. All right. Those are all my questions for now.
Commissioner Zucker.
I had two questions. That the first one may be better for the applicant, but I'm trying to, and Netta, thanks for giving a little clarification on that. Trying to kind of wrap my head around the kind of goal of the warrants and exceptions. It seems like this project overall is a much lower density than a lot of the other projects, at least in the time that I've been on the Planning Commission that we've seen. And it seems like a lot of the other kind of past warrants and exceptions have been to try to get more units in a project, and I don't know if that's the case here, or it's more kind of around making some of the units larger. Kind of trying to get a sense of that. Does anyone on staff know? Or
I would defer to the applicant team for that question.
But to answer one part of your question, they are not asking for more units or increase in density or anything of that nature. The unit count of the project remains exactly the same as what was approved within the specific plan area. The warrants and exceptions, and again, the applicant can elaborate, are really just around building design.
Great. The second was it was hard for me to tell from the staff report. Around, it sounded like the kind of biggest potential exception is around open space, and I see in the staff report it says, being asked to deviate by less than 5% in each instance. Do we have a sense of kind of the total aggregate amount of open space we might be, kind of giving up, I guess you could say, from our specific plan with those exceptions?
So we don't have a total calculation as to the amount of open space that's being given up. But the staff report, the reason why that 5% or less is mentioned is to provide some general context as to how much open space is being given up, like per lot. So for the 5% or less, it's generally pretty just to give you a general idea how much open space is being given up. Because when working with the applicant team, some of their designs, it was kind of challenging for them to fit the open space within the parameters of this Parkland specific plan. And I know they can speak to this a little bit more, but that 5% or less is just to provide some additional context per lot as to how much open space is being given up. For the most part, the applicant team's proposal, their open space, they are coming pretty close to the requirements per lot.
Thank you.
Commissioner Farkas, did you have a question?
So with the open space, that would be for the for sale lots. It doesn't have anything to do with the park space, correct? And is that correct?
That is correct.
And then a lot of it had to do with balconies and things like that. Was that part of that as well that I saw?
So with the open space, it dealt with the Parkland specific plan is very prescriptive as it pertains to specific dimensions of, for example, the backyard, the front yard. And so with the open space requirements, the applicant team was working with us to try to say, hey, we can come close to some of the dimensional requirements. So for example, a lot may have a requirement of the open space has to be 15 feet or at least 18 feet wide, but the applicant team were coming close to, like, let's say 14 feet wide. And so it dealt with like rear yards and the sizing of yards. So percentage-wise, it dealt with the area, but also dimensions that are requirements of the Parkland specific plan.
And also topographic conditions that are
Correct.
existing.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Farkas. I'm sorry, pardon me, Lagerquist.
You're not used to sitting next to me.
Correct.
Thank you, Chair Comden. I had two questions following up on Commissioner Zucker's first question. The first one is the staff report discussed briefly the inclusionary units were all included in phase one, and I was wondering if staff could speak to that. Like, what does that mean? How many units and so forth?
So I don't have the precise unit count for inclusionary units. However, the Parkland specific plan did require affordable housing in the form of inclusionary units. And it, excuse me, and it explicitly stated that those units would be housed within phase one, the Parkland's apartments.
Now, is it possible to get a little more specific information on that at some point?
About how many affordable units the project does have?
Mm-hmm.
Sure, we can follow up and provide more information there. Part of it happening in phase one was that was the first phase to be built, and so we wanted to bring the units online as quickly as possible. And so they were done, didn't know how long before phase two, phase three, or phase four would be developed. It was better to know when the specific plan went into effect and they were going to construct, do all of the units in the first phase. But we can find out exactly how many units.
Right. I guess my main question is, were those the unit numbers based on the overall project or just on phase one?
The overall project.
Okay. And my second question is, it discussed meeting the RENA requirements, but I assume that's only for the median income RENA requirements?
I'm sorry, do you mind repeating that?
So it discussed meeting the RENA requirements, so like for which income level?
Yeah, so we can look into what the amount and type of affordable units they built, and RENA requires a certain amount of each affordability level being constructed, and so all of the units that they constructed went towards meeting the RENA numbers already because they are constructed and online.
But phase two and phase three are just meeting the median?
They are just, market rate standard
Right, okay.
Units, yes.
That's all my questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have a few questions. Phase one was built by a different developer. Is it still owned by a different developer, or is it now Shea as well?
I believe it's still owned by Mr. Ashkar.
Okay. So the area, if you could put up the map that shows the four phases. Right. Well, that map doesn't as clearly show the barranca, the brown barranca. It is in gray above phase two. Yeah. So that is between phase one and phase two, three. Who is taking responsibility for that?
I would defer to the applicant on the agreement they've made between the two property owners on who's maintaining.
Okay, so someone owns that barranca. It's not public lands.
They
'Cause I see
they
these-
don't own it, but as you can see, there's landscaping along it.
Yeah.
The applicant can better speak to, is the existing property owner taking on the maintenance and such of that, or is Shea Homes? But I would defer to them.
Okay. Do we know how old phase one is? How long it's been online?
I do not know at the moment, but we can get that information for you. It's been a few years. I think it's I believe it came online in 2019, but we can double check and get the information for you.
It's less than 5 years old.
Yes.
Okay, that's That's what I wanted to know. All right. Any other questions of staff? Yes, Commissioner Davis.
Clarification on the topic of the two-story home request that is in the overlay of the 1.5. Is that all of the that's all of the homes along the area that it's adjacent to the South Linden and that west, those existing homes? Is that correct?
So all the homes along that are adjacent to those existing homes, they are within the overlay. However, there's only one lot, lot 21, that needs that deviation in order to go up.
There's just the one, and that's the one that has the windows that look.
I'm sorry, I misspoke, Commissioner. I'm sorry. All the homes do need that height, they do need that deviation for the height, but then lot 21 is the only lot that needs the deviation regarding the windows, the western-facing windows.
Just one window that is in like a stairway. It's
correct.
Stairway or hallway. Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Sorry for misspeaking.
Commissioner Abbey.
I just had one additional question. I wanted to zero in on the 3 exceptions. Do you have a slide that talks about specifically what those exceptions are for? I know it's in the staff report and I read it. I just wanted to be reminded of it.
So the slide that's currently on the screen cites the code reference for the 3 exceptions that are requested. The first one, the front setback, 10 feet minimum, 20 feet maximum for single-family homes. There are a few lots that the applicant is asking an exception for where the setback is greater than 20 feet. And then the side street setback, I believe that's only for one lot where the portion of the street in the building is set back approximately 9 feet, not meeting that. And then the open space exception deals with the townhouses within phase 3, and the applicant can correct me on that, regarding making sure the open space is on, basically dealing with the percentage of open space for those lots, and making sure that the open space meets a minimum dimension, as it mentions 15 feet for open space in the rear yard.
Okay, and when the applicant comes up, I'd like to find out why they needed to go less than that for the open space. All right, thank you.
I have one final question too. Are newly constructed homes such as these requiring fire suppression sprinklers inside of them?
Yes, fire code requires sprinklering.
Very good. Okay, Commissioner Davis, please.
I did have one more about the garage doors. Can you clarify what's exactly that? I mean, that's just under the warrants, right? But can you clarify that?
So in the Parkland specific plans, it's worded kind of funny, but when it comes to garage doors, the specific plan envision that a garage door, you have basically 2 garage doors that will be separated by a column. And so the applicant is proposing for some of their units to have just one singular garage door to where you can fit 2 cars in simultaneously. And so that's why they're requesting that specific deviation. It's worded kind of funny, but it's a way to say the specific plan did not envision just one big garage door.
So right. So and then I think most of the garage doors are like on the alleys, but there's a few where the style does have them at the front, where they'll have like 3 different styles, and it was one of them would have a division and make it a 2 and a 1, and then but some of them had the big door.
Correct.
So, okay, so I guess we could ask them why they couldn't apply the same design type to split it up, but okay. But it's just a fraction of them, right? So anyway, okay, just to clarify.
I would defer to the applicant.
Yeah, all right, thanks.
Vice Chair Lagerquist.
Yeah, thank you. You actually spurred another question in my mind. And I didn't understand the garage spaces warrant. It was like requiring 3 spaces. I didn't quite understand that one.
So within the Parkland specific plan, some lots are limited to the maximum number of cars they can have in a garage, limited to 3 cars. The applicant is asking for to deviate, to not comply with that particular standard. And I'll leave to the applicant team as to why.
Any other questions of staff? Okay. Now I believe we move into the applicant, their period. Are there members of the team here to give a presentation? Someone brought a window in, so I'm assuming it's... Good evening. You'll be given 10 minutes for your presentation, and then we'll ask questions of you.
Hi, I'm Brooke Doy. I'm with Shea Homes. This is Mike Hesmahalt. He's with WHA Architects. And he'll primarily be here for questions. My goal tonight is to go through really the warrants and exceptions to better explain them. A couple things that aren't in the presentation that I'll just touch on real quick that you had asked about. For Phase 4, just for clarification, we're proposing the same architecture in Phase 4. We were just still refining the site plan, so we weren't prepared to submit it. We're trying to alleviate a lot of the deviations that we're requesting tonight. When we purchased Phase 2 and 3, the final map was already recorded, so the lot lines were set. We have a little more, play in Phase 4 that we can accommodate some of these adjustments. And then in regards to the Brown Bronca, that will be maintained by the Maintenance Assessment District. So the city will maintain it, but it's through funds from the homeowners at Del Sol. And I think the rest of it I will touch on in here. And actually, you can pass through these first few, and we'll just go straight to the warrants and exceptions because Gene already addressed these in his presentation. Okay, and then if you have questions, we can go back to any of those as well. So on this first one, the primary building setback, so we had some front setbacks that were greater than 20 feet. They were supposed to be between 10 and 20. And in this case, we have a water line easement and sewer easement that runs through the front yards. It's adjacent to the park. We don't have any of the wet utilities in the alleys, and so in this case, there will be an HOA easement in those front yards. But in order to fit that, the homes have a setback of 21 to 24 feet. You can go to the next one. And so this is that side yard that Gene had talked about. It only occurs at one lot, and at the dining room, it pinches down to 9 feet. And that was really just our effort to increase the space between the kitchen and dining and have a reasonable hallway from the entry down to the back of the house. So again, just in one spot. Okay, you can go to the next one. This is the other exception that was in there, and it was about the on-grade backyards at the townhomes. And so in order to accommodate the grades on the site, we've stepped it at the townhome buildings. And so this is also causing the height to go over the 28 feet in the rear of the home. In the front, it's below the 28 feet. But to accommodate it, we've added some steps coming out the back door. So their backyard is at grade. They'll have additional steps down to their garage. And then what these two show you is, for the most part, they are all exceeding the 15-foot minimum, but the building on the left is at 14.3. It still meets the overall required size. It's just we didn't have that 15-foot dimension. And then on the next slide, we do have one townhome building that is at 10 feet. It does not meet the 15%. In this case, though, it never met it in the specific plan either, and we're really just following the same design that was already there. So that's that one. The balcony encroachment, I won't spend too much time on this. We have a few plans where the balcony encroached beyond the 10-foot setback. So we maintain the 10-foot to livable, but the balcony does encroach on some of the floor plans. So on the next slide, this is the porches and stoops. So it did, depending on if you had a porch or stoop, it dictated how much you could go into the setback area in the front yard, and porches were 7 feet deep. In some cases, we only had a 6-foot deep porch. And so that's what this is really revolved around. And then as Jean noted, in some cases on the narrow lots, they are wider than the 30% of the house width. But we think it really just is enhancing the overall street scene. And again, it's only on these 2 of the 12 single-family plans. And on the townhomes, we don't have this issue anywhere. So on the next one, this is the window that Jean had already talked about, so we can skip, unless there's questions, but we can go back to that. Sorry, I'm trying to pay attention to the time. So on this next one, gets into the open space, and I know there were questions about that. In this case, we meet the overall 28%. We're actually over it by about 500 square feet, but there's 3 lots, which this will occur again in phase 4, but this particular plan on how it fit on the lot, we are at 24 feet rear yard, and we're supposed to be at 25 feet. So again, it's just a 1-foot deviation, but overall size-wise, we still meet it. And then on the next one, we do have 6 lots that do not meet the percentage. The lot on the left, this is the one that gets close to that 5%. It's lot 11, and what's hard to see is it has a really long driveway because it's accessed off an alley. So that's creating the lot size to be so much bigger. So then when you look at the backyard, we're at 23.3, and we're supposed to be at 28. So on a square footage, it's consistent with the other lots of that size. It's just because of the extra large lot. Lot 14 is at 17.7, but this one has the really big front yard, and we can't put the front yard in the open space calculation. Again, if it was a standard lot, it would calc out at 20.3. And then lot 29, it just, because we had to jog it for the transformer, it's just under, it's at 26.3. And then we have 3 other lots on the next slide at 18.8, 19.6, and 19.7. And again, some of it had to do with just at the alley, pulling it, the fence back at the corner. So only 6 lots that aren't meeting that percentage. The 4-car garage is shown on the next slide. So from the alley, it looks like a 2-car garage. It's just a 2-car tandem. So again, on the alleys, we can have 3 side by side. In this case, it's 2 with a tandem. It occurs 4 times in what we've submitted. And then on the last slide is the garage doors. And really, buyer preference is to have the wider doors so they're not constantly hitting their mirrors going in and out. But in order to follow the spirit of the specific plan, we did put some of the single-car garage doors in there. And we did it elevation specific. This is the Plan 10. We have it on 3 other plans. I just didn't include all of those in here. And so with my last few minutes, hopefully I didn't go too quick on any of that. But I did want to address the windows. I think Shea is really trying to build a community that's going to appeal to homeowners of all different makeups. I mean, because we start with the townhomes and go all the way to the large fresco single-family homes. And, we really see it as a community that we're trying to bring families into. And part of that is keeping the homes affordable. I mean, it's all relative right now, I get it. But the cost of housing just to buy the home, but also our construction costs are going through the roof. And, adding this window requirement is just making that situation that much worse. And in doing our research, we're just not finding, we looked at aluminum windows, they couldn't meet the energy efficiency requirements for Title 24. There's other options, which the city had suggested, fiberglass and composite windows. The fiberglass, we looked into it with Milgard, who's our window manufacturer here, and they told us it's going to be a 250% cost increase. So just to put it in perspective, for the townhomes, that was $4,000. We have to add an additional $10,000 just to go with that window. And then on the single family, it's at about $8,000. We'd have to pay an additional $21,000 to go with the fiberglass. The composite windows, they are about 90% cost increase, and potentially a lead time of 20 to 24 weeks. They have gotten better in the last month, but lead time is a big issue on that, which is the case for a lot of construction materials. So it's like the more we can do that we know we have a better chance of getting, the better. But the composite, so to pay all the extra costs, I mean, our research is showing just durability, maintenance, energy efficiency, it's all the same as the vinyl. So we're just not sure you're getting a bang for your buck. So why make the house cost more expensive for us to then turn around and charge more to the homeowners when they want to buy the house? From an aesthetic perspective, they look the same. And we actually thought the farm was vinyl windows until we talked to the manufacturer who did the farm, and they said, oh no, they're the composite, which is wood with vinyl over it. And so we went to one of our other job sites in Camarillo, because we use the vinyl at all of our job sites. It's industry norm. And talking to our Title 24 consultant, I mean, that's what he's running. He hasn't run a project with fiberglass. But so this is the vinyl window, and, you know, I guess we're comfortable with it. You know, we'd like to think everyone else is. We brought it just in case you wanted to take a look at it. I don't know, you know, if any of you have had the opportunity to walk new model homes in the last few years to see the vinyl windows. But there it is if someone wants to take a close-up look. They don't all have that design, and we have a mix of tan and white depending on the elevation colors. So with that, I see I'm done with my time, so.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions for the applicant, please? Commissioner McCarty.
Thank you, Brooke. I'd like to get back to the Brown Barranca Linear Park. You mentioned that the city will maintain that through the HOA, correct?
Well, the city maintains it through the Maintenance Assessment District, and that was something that was set up years ago. And there's a dollar amount that each resident within the apartment sites and our for sale project pays towards that. And it includes the Brown Barranca, it includes the linear trail, it includes a bunch of the other parks. And I had a slide that showed, I think, some of the MAD parks, Maintenance Assessment District parks. But pretty much any of the bigger parks throughout the neighborhood and with a playground and stuff, it's being maintained by the city again.
Okay, that's good for the maintenance. So for the actual construction of the Class 1 bike path along that linear park, will Shea be doing that?
Yes, Shea's doing that, and Shea right now is also installing the box culverts in the Barranca, and so that we're doing under all of our permits with Army Corps of Engineers, Fish and Wildlife, and so then we'll have to revegetate the Barranca, and we'll have a 5-year monitoring program with that to reestablish it. But with that work is the trail improvements, and yes, Shea will put those in, and just like all the parks. We'll install all of them and then turn them over to the Maintenance Assessment District.
The city bicycle master plan shows the Brown Barranca Linear Park Class 1 bike path meeting up with the continuation of that same path, which is in existence on the north side of Telegraph Avenue. What is the plan to make those two portions of the Class 1 bike path contiguous? Across Telegraph. Right now, the north side of the Brown Barranca Linear Park bike path will end at Telegraph, and it picks up on the other side of Telegraph on the north side. And there's no stoplight there, there's no crossing there, there's nothing. So have you and or the city thought about how that will be implemented, how that Class 1 bike path will be made contiguous?
It's not something we have looked into. It's not what's currently in the plans. When we bought the project, the plans were actually already approved. And so we're just implementing what's been approved. I'm not sure if there's a future plan on how to connect that.
Okay, that is kind of not consistent with the 2005 general plan goal of
Commissioner McCarty?
Accessible community.
Yeah, so Commissioner McCarty, Shea Homes and the Parkland specific plan will be responsible for building out what's within their boundaries in the specific plan area. The connectivity of the network through the city can and will be accomplished in many different ways, whether it's other development that comes that builds segments of it, whether it's grants, which the city has been applying for other connection trails and such to implement it. So some of the implementation will happen as city projects or CIP projects, capital improvement, and some will be developers will come in and build out. Shea Homes is building out that portion which is within their project boundaries. The city will most likely have to pick up across the street and build those connections.
So this is aside from the Shea discussion then, but how do we ensure that that is on the docket?
That's a great question. The ATP, the Active Transportation Plan that's going on right now, is digging further into detail about the connectivities of the bike infrastructure. They're actually looking at that bike network overall again, and so it's going to lay out or enhance that network, and then they'll go through an implementation plan of what areas and segments to implement, when, and how. That will involve public engagement and all of those things. So I don't have a specific timeline of when those connections are going to build out, but that's definitely something that's going to be discussed through that process.
Okay, thank you. My concern is that you hit the end of the Brown Linear Park bike path and you have a safety issue
Right.
crossing over Telegraph where there's no crossing.
Yeah, and the Transportation Division is involved in reviewing all the building permits and the construction, and so they'll make sure that there's safety measures put in place now, and then again, what future build out will look like.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Abbey.
Quick question. I may have asked this already, but wanted to ask the applicant. You mentioned height. There were just a few items, residences that would be greater than 28 feet. Can you go to that slide and then point out where, in relationship to existing homes, these exceptions might be or warrants?
Okay, I mean, almost the overall site plan might be the best. It's only on the townhomes. And it is the townhomes that front Telegraph. Okay, he's circling on that. Yeah, so it's those townhomes that front Telegraph. So from Telegraph, though, they're not, the excess of 28 feet is in the backside. So you really only see it from the alley, and actually you'll have the single-story garage separating the alley from the home. And then it occurs again, kind of one block over. I don't know how best to describe it. Right below the brown Bronca, running perpendicular. So, yeah, it's the purple ones. Yeah, it's the ones running perpendicular to the brown Bronca.
Okay, so there's...
Yeah, so they're not near the existing homes. It's all contained within the development.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, I'd like to ask, can you identify the parks in phase 2 and 3, please? And you said
Yeah.
that these parks are going to be maintained by the city?
The city through the Maintenance Assessment District, correct. So let's see. So you have one right in the middle. Next to it is the Community Rec Center. That will be the private HOA. It's fenced off. Across the street and to the left, that's a small little pocket park. It just has a barbecue and some benches, but that's Maintenance Assessment District. There's another one in the middle of phase 4. You can see kind of the bigger grass area. It has a playground, and then if you go up, you've got the open detention basin, but then to the left of it it's a big just grass field, and the idea there is going to be for youth sports. But it's not programmed with anything. It's just going to be grass. The linear trail, and what's cut off is at the end of the linear trail there, closer to Telegraph, there's another playground.
Okay. And these streets, are they private or public?
All the streets are public, including the alleys. Again, they're all maintained by the Maintenance Assessment District, though.
All right. The reason I'm kind of focusing on open space in the Barranca is there was a number of homeless people living there prior to the grading of these areas, and it could become a problem again. And it being public space, we should just be aware of the potentials of things happening. Any further questions for the applicant? Oh, Commissioner Farkas.
So Jean, you brought up condition 30, trash enclosures. That was going to be modified, and I did have a question on that because I was wondering, are there any trash enclosures associated with this project? No. And it was going to be one of my comments to remove that condition.
So our office has worked with Public Works to modify the condition, as well as the applicant team, and the applicant team had met with Public Works to discuss how the waste management plan for the recreation center specifically. And it's my understanding that the applicant team, Public Works, and our office have come to an agreement on new language for that specific condition, just to say one, to provide a waste management plan that will be approved by Public Works that's consistent based upon the agreement that we all reached.
And then one other question regarding the conditions. Condition 48 and 51 are water, and they're regarding net zero, and those are duplicative. They're both the same condition. So you might want to take one of those out.
Which condition numbers were those again?
48 and 51.
We'll take care of that.
Thank you. And then a question for the applicant. Do you have any, are you comfortable with the way the conditions are written do you have any comments?
We are, with the exception of the window one.
Okay.
But everything else was fine. Majority of the sewer and water comments, they're all plan check related, and the plans have actually been updated and approved since then. So the engineer confirmed they've all been taken care of already. So
we had a planning commissioner for many years who was also on the DRC who for many years made it his effort to not have any vinyl windows in the city. So that's something that hasn't happened in a very long time. So that's probably where a lot of this has come from.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, very good. Thank you very much. And thanks for bringing the window. Now I'd like to open the public hearing for comments. Do we have speakers tonight, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we have one speaker, Bill McReynolds.
Good evening, Bill.
Good evening. Thank you very much. So, beyond my day job, I am the president of the Building Industry Association Los Angeles Ventura chapter. So I get to do a lot of cool things. Like I got to sit down with Rick Russo yesterday and talk about his candidacy. But I also get to do a lot of things. This is my third hearing this week, so I get a lot of that. But when my friend Judy called me, I was happy to come out. So I want to talk about the vinyl windows. So Ventura County school enrollment nosedives yet again, faster than state trend. So this was published on April 18th. And it says, Oxnard Union School District actually grew this year, as it is in the last decade. It has become the county's largest school district after the Conejo Valley School District. Tim McCoy, district superintendent, noted that the district covers communities Camarillo, Somas, Port Hueneme, and El Rio, and remains one of the last affordable areas of the county. May 16th, schools compete with Ventura County's shrinking pool. Enrollment is in free fall with no end in sight. It goes on to say, Ventura School District has lost 18,000 students in the last 7 years, 10% of its total enrollment over it. People continue to flee. Shea Homes, second largest builder in California. So I'm happy to provide you all of this. So our DRC condition went from design recommendation to consider use of other materials to staff has added a condition to require additional materials. Those additional materials, as was pointed out by the representatives from Shea Homes, cost an additional $8,000 per single family home. So every $5,000 you add to the cost of a home adds $40 per at 3% interest. So essentially we're adding $80 a month to the cost of the home per month for 30 years. For what? Interest rates today, this is printed off today, 5%. So how much does 1% mortgage interest rate make on your difference? Up to $350 for each tick between where we were at the beginning of the year to where we are today. what are we trying to achieve by requiring these windows? So we are talking about affordability. We are losing families at a record rate here in Ventura. Our schools are suffering. We have an opportunity to build 330 family homes. Commissioner Zucker, if we were to build this development today, we would not be building 330 homes. We would be building 1,000 homes on this opportunity. We need to embrace this with the affordability. We need to allow them to do the vinyl windows. There is no aesthetic difference picked up on it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much.
Here, I'm gonna-
Madam Clerk, did we have another public speaker submit something?
Yes, we do. Stephanie Caldwell?
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Caldwell. I'm the president and CEO of the Ventura Chamber of Commerce. I hadn't planned on speaking tonight, but listening to the dialogue, just 2 nights ago, we sat in this room until about 11:30 at night, talking about an issue and an ordinance that was brought on, the necessity behind it was brought on based on the affordability issue that we have in this community. Granted, that isn't all because of things that we've had control over here in Ventura, but a great number of those things are directly related to the issues that we have caused or created for ourselves here in Ventura. When I hear that it's one DRC member that used to sit on this board and the DRC who had a preference for non-vinyl windows when it's industry norm, that is one of those reasons, those falsely created challenges that we have created for ourselves that makes housing less affordable. Making housing more expensive to build does not make it more affordable for the end user. We have an affordability crisis in this community. We need to work actively together to make sure that we are doing everything we can to solve that affordability issue to the best extent that we can. We don't need false impediments that create additional barriers to that. So I would please encourage you to go with the DRC recommendation that it was considered. I believe you heard the applicant share with you what their research showed and the cost and the barrier that that would create to the end user. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Caldwell. No other speakers? No further speakers. Okay, very good. Then
Mr. Chair, could I add something?
Yes, please.
I want to correct the record here. The condition is not because of a DRC member who is not on the DRC and used to be on PC. It's because of the current DRC. The condition is also there because staff believes it's appropriate. So there are several sources that cite that there are environmental issues with vinyl windows and cites that fiberglass, for example, is a better alternative to consider. That does not mean that Planning Commission has to keep the condition, but to make statements that this is about somebody from the past is just erroneous. I would also like to state that in all fairness, Shea Homes is going to sell the homes for what they can sell it for. So adding $8,000 per home, do you believe that's actually going to increase the price by $8,000? Or do you believe that requiring the $8,000 is going to, not requiring the $8,000 is going to reduce the price by $8,000 is the other question. Now, we don't have any actual information that shows that it is going to be $8,000 based on articles, based on architects that I've spoken to, one on the DRC, others that are not. The cost difference between fiberglass and vinyl is not as high as what's being stated. Now, the market right now is very different, and so it could be that high. Not saying that, but if whether the DRC recommendation is included or not, I just want to make sure it's not based on statements that are not quite accurate.
Thank you, Peter. All right, I'm going to close the public meeting and bring it back to the commissioners. Would someone like to begin? Oh, actually, before you do, Commissioner, I sent you an email with photographs of windows from the farm. Is it possible for you to retrieve them from your email and potentially show them on screen?
Yes, we do have them available.
Very good. And that was within the past 10 minutes, just FYI. Yeah, brand new. Okay. Commissioner Davis.
I've had experience with the same question about the vinyl windows in my own work, and it's a hard topic because the price is substantially more for some. I would not be surprised if the numbers that they quoted are not correct. We've seen. I don't know. It's been a while since we've done the comparisons because mine was for affordable housing, multifamily affordable housing, and we did do the comparisons at that time to it was over. It was a project with over it was like 131 dwellings, and so we did the comparison between I think we went with vinyl, and then we looked at two alternatives as well. And one, I think it was very comparable. One was exceptionally higher, and one was, 50 or 60% more. And in the end, we were able to present that, and we went with the vinyl. It is, but I was on the U.S. the local chapter of the U.S. Green Building Council, and we actually showed a really kind of tongue-in-cheek, funny presentation about. I forget the name of it, but it was about vinyl siding, and it was a young woman who was trying to convince her parents not to use it, and she did this whole expose on exactly how it's done and everything. But she showed both factors because it is the embedded energy and how it's made is not environmentally friendly, but it does have incredible energy savings once it's installed, and so there's it's a hard topic for sure. They don't have a lot of great alternatives really for the windows, and we end up using them in the end because the energy ratings that they have are that helps the homes, and the building code does have integral very high standards in California for the energy factors and the materials. So. And in light of that, it does allow vinyl windows because they have the good, because of the other factors that you're getting in the sustainability. So it's a balance. It's hard. I know. I just wanted to present that as information. Besides that topic, which I know is something probably others want to talk about, I think that their presentation on how minimal the other exceptions, kind of how it's only very few of them, and how it goes from the requirement is maybe 20 feet, and they're asking for 19.3. Sounds very reasonable. None of it sounds like it's going to really degrade the aesthetics or hurt anyone else in the neighborhood. And one house with a window towards the others. I feel very comfortable accepting all of this. So just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else care to chat about this? Please do, Commissioner Farkas.
I agree with Commissioner Davis. I think the specific plan was incorporated in 2000 or approved in 2009, 13 years ago. A lot of this they inherited. I know the site does have some site constraints because of grading and things like that. So I think we're splitting hairs with these minor deviations. And warrants and exceptions are there for this purpose because you can't make everything exactly to code and how the specific plan would be. So I agree. I have really no issues with anything they're asking for. I'm going to stay silent on the windows. I'm not a fan of them. I know that there's environmental issues with them, but as Commissioner Davis said, everything has its good and its bad. So I will listen to what some of the other commissioners have to say on that. I'm not going to take a hard stance on it. I'm still on the fence.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner McCarty.
With regard to the warrants and exceptions, I agree with the previous two commissioners who spoke. I have no qualms with any of those. I'm fine with those. With regard to the Windows issue, I feel like arguments on both sides so far are in my mind, hearsay evidence so far. To convince me completely one way or the other, I think it would entail a more rigorous analysis, actually someone to analyze the situation. And I don't know if we want to go down that path. And so to once again echo Commissioner Farkas's sentiment on this subject, I would be happy to hear more discussion and would likely go with what the group decides as consensus if we're going to decide this tonight.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner Abbey.
I had one additional question regarding the clerestory window exception or warrant, and then I have comments. The staff, I know I saw that in the report. What was the analysis on why that one was going to be recommended?
So part of the thinking of staff is that that particular lot and that particular clerestory window would not have an adverse impact on adjacent properties.
Okay. That answers the question. It's been sort of my practice to look closely at warrants and exceptions, and regarding extreme hardship, trying to make that finding is difficult to make, although I could see arguments on both sides. I do think the applicant and fellow commissioners have made good points. The exceptions are very minimal. It would be splitting hairs to argue any one of them, and so I won't argue them tonight. I think the project itself is very good. The project was approved back in 2008 under a former owner. I think the inclusionary housing aspect of this is already sailed, unfortunately. I think it's something we need to look very closely on more current projects, and it's unfortunate that we really can't revisit that tonight. It's a missed opportunity. I do want to hear more from staff and from fellow commissioners regarding the window issue, and those are my comments for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Zucker.
I guess I'll start by saying I think if I had been on Planning Commission in 2009, I don't think I would have loved this specific plan. Maybe it's a moot point, but I think the really actually incredibly low density of this project. I mean, we're talking about such little available land in our community left that's not either already developed or kind of under the SOAR boundaries, right? It's building all of these single-family homes is, in my mind, not the best use of that land, environmentally or for affordability. And frankly, if we had done this specific plan differently over a decade ago, that would have done much more for both the affordability of these homes and for the environment than anything to do with windows, right? But that being said, I think I'm open-minded on the window thing. I hear the arguments on both sides. And yeah, interested to hear any more from other commissioners or staff. And on the kind of warrants and exceptions, I think certainly open space is something I really care about. But I think in this case it seems like it's really about if someone wants to buy a single family home with a little more porch and a little less yard, or a little bigger living room and a little less yard, that's none of my business. I think when we're talking about an applicant having less, public park space or less kind of courtyard space in a shared apartment complex, that's where I think those open space, issues raise more concerns for me. So, yeah, I think overall, to me, it is what it is, and I'm open-minded on the window thing.
Thank you. Vice Chair, do you have comments?
I do, thank you. I feel like, for the most part, I agree with all the commissioners, especially with Commissioner Zucker. I thought it was kind of an odd statement in the report. It talked about 4 and 5 bedroom houses and that these were small family homes. And I thought, that doesn't really jive with me. I agree. I think it's a missed opportunity for inclusionary housing and environmental, good development, density development. But aside from all that, I know kind of are where we are. I agree with the warrants and exceptions. I don't think we need to split hairs there. I think Shay has done a great job they did a great job on the presentation. I appreciate that. That explained a lot more than I was able to gather from the report, so I appreciate that. As far as the windows, I'm going to go with Commissioner Riccardi that, man, you as an environmental engineer, you really have to do some sort of analysis to figure out, if we're going to look at it from an environmental sense, what is the best choice. And I would need a lot more information, things like, are we talking about the making of these windows, the waste streams? Are we talking about carbon footprint? Are we talking about, what are the materials required to make these windows? I don't know. I'm more on the water side of environmental engineering, so I don't know. I would like a lot more information before I made a decision. Having said that, you could also do an analysis on all the other types of windows. They're all going to have a lot of environmental issues. And so I hear Peter regarding the affordability, and I would agree that a developer is going to market those houses for whatever they can get. And so again, we're back up against the wall with the affordability. What is the actual affordability of this development? So that was a lot to say. I don't know about the windows either. I would definitely enjoy hearing more opinion where to go. But I will say, I think I would probably lean towards being okay with the vinyl windows. I certainly know a lot of houses that have them, and they are an energy saver, which is very important. So that's kind of where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Netta, were you able to find those photos?
Chair Comden, I did receive your email. We are in a hybrid, so we're also on a virtual platform, so we can't put that into our presentation right now. I apologize.
Okay.
Without disconnecting from our virtual platform.
Right. I'm wondering if I were to do this, could it be shown on screen? Because you seem to be able to zoom in. Is that possible? My point here is...
I don't think so, because the CAPS TV upstairs is switching the screen monitors from cameras.
Right now, there's not a zoom in on me, so...
Yeah, so I think if CAPS could do a zoom in on Chair Comden, and then you can try to...
I'll lift it up.
Yeah.
The point of this exercise
So
is
it's
to
on
show
you now. There you go.
the windows at the farm, which the applicant just mentioned. Oops, hold on, wrong direction. One moment, please. Which the applicant had just mentioned are not vinyl windows, which surprised me greatly because, I'm sorry, this is really not that visible, but these look like the bad example of vinyl windows that everybody doesn't like. And my point here is apparently composite windows can look just as bad as vinyl windows. So there's two elements. One is the look of them on a home, and these are not attractive by anybody's standard, but they're not vinyl. So I think the two issues when it comes to the windows are appearance and how it fits in the community on the home, and then the environmental. And I agree with everything that's been said here. I would like to have more consideration on the environmental impact that vinyl brings. Is it so substantial that we should not be considering them on this and other projects? I mean, there's a lot of retrofit throughout this community that most of them, unless it's very upscale, are vinyl windows. Very upscale homes use steel casement windows or something of that sort. So there's the pro and con of using this material. We can't decide based upon the detail that we've been asking for on those issues right now. So I'm not sure how the body feels about. Yes, Commissioner Davis.
Well, there's just as a consideration, since we're all sort of like on the fence, we don't have an established guideline that doesn't allow them. It's something that someone picked up as a comment, and it isn't. We have like the building code, which has embedded energy standards. which this product is going to satisfy, the design is going to satisfy. So I'm not, until we establish that the city has sustainable standards that are above what the state of California has, it seems like, I don't know, I would feel, I mean, I have used vinyl in my projects, even affordable, and there's also the question of like, why would you allow them in affordable but not in market rate? And so it's still, and if you want to think of a standard, the state has a standard of green building code, and vinyl is allowed in that. So to me, I feel like I would be okay with accepting them and ask, that condition not be included to me.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Farkas.
I agree with Commissioner Davis. I think it's such a, we're not looking at 5,000 units. We are looking at a pretty small project on the grand scheme of things, and I really don't have an issue if they wanted to use vinyl windows, as long as they were nice and looked good and made sure that they were quality because of the energy efficient standards, and they looked good.
Okay.
That would be important to me.
Thank you. Commissioner Abbey.
So I hear that side of the argument. I wanted to ask Mr. Gilly one more. What is the city standard on that, and once again, why was staff and DRC recommending that another product be used, and what was that product?
Yes, so the DRC didn't specify a particular material because one of the things that staff and DRC are working on is not necessarily dictating an end state, but make the comment on what they see as an issue to be improved on. Fiberglass is the commonly referenced one because there are reports that say it's just as energy efficient, and there are reports that say it's not as costly. Now, again, don't know what the market today is. Because of the number of exceptions and warrants, we were comfortable asking for a little more. If this fully complied with everything, then yes, we don't have an objective standard and we should not go there. So it's a judgment call.
Further comments, Commission? Well, I'd just like to say in closing my comments, the warrants and exceptions, I think, are minimal, as been stated before. There is no perfect rectangle to begin a project like this. This is real land with real hurdles and spatial constraints. So I think they've done a very good job. So with that, I'm going to ask, would someone like to make a motion in some way? Commissioner McCarty.
I'd like to make a motion that this project be accepted based on one more condition, and that is what was discussed earlier at this meeting, and that is that we have confirmation that the number of inclusionary housing units in Phase 1 were actually built to the numbers required for the entire project. So I'm happy with approving this project, but I do want the city staff to make sure that the project as a whole does have the required number of inclusionary housing units.
Very good. Do we have a second for this?
I'll second that.
Okay.
I have a question on that, though. So does that include the existing condition language that says that you can't use vinyl windows, you have to use better, or that they can?
My motion would be to place no specifics on the type of windows used.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, so we're
So the
removing that
removal
condition.
of condition number 35.
That's what the motion is.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just want to comment on the added condition. This is a design review, and so I don't believe we can put any type of inclusionary housing requirement on it. What I can say, though, is there is a Phase 4, and if we do find out that Phase 1 didn't have enough, we would be able to require that it comply by either causing enough units to be affordable in Phase 1 somehow, or doing it in Phase 4. in that respect, you still get to I think, the intent of what you're asking for?
That's true. So could those words then, Peter, be added as part of the conditioning?
It wouldn't be a condition, though. It's
Yeah.
not a condition of the design review of phases 2 and 3. It's something that staff can commit, we will look into, and because in the end, if phase 1 does not have enough doesn't meet the specific plan's affordability requirement for the whole project, then there's a non-compliance issue, and we're able to address that without there being a condition in this approval.
Okay, I'm fine. I'm fine with that.
Commissioner Farkas.
Is there any way, Netta, that you can put that into the meeting minutes so Commissioner McCarty has a comfort level, so it's not in the approval, but it's in writing in the minutes, that staff will do that? That was recommended?
Thank you, Commissioner Farkas. My recommendation then for you, Commissioner McCarty, and your motion would be to approve the resolution with the removal of condition number 35 and a motion that staff would look into the affordability of phase 1 and that all of the specific plan complied with building the affordable units. If not, that it would come back in phase 4 and that just be a motion and not part of the conditions of approval. Does that help?
Yes,
Okay.
that's fine.
One edit is just if it's not in compliance, it will be enforced. Not necessarily that it's phase 4, there may be other ways.
Okay, thank you. I do like the idea of it being codified in some way so it's not forgotten, because phase 4 could be years down the road. There's a lot of construction to happen before that. Yes, Vice Chair.
I just want to ask Peter a follow-on question, so Shea is already committed to phase 4, is that correct? Or could that be sold to another developer? And then that hardship could fall on, like, if we didn't meet it in phase 1, then that total hardship.
Looks like the applicant's coming up. Okay, we're going to reopen the hearing. Please proceed.
So as of right now, we've purchased phase 2 and 3 from John Ashkar. We are under contract to purchase phase 4, and we have some outside dates. So he is the same owner as the apartment site, so, at least we'll figure it out, obviously, before we purchase or do the official takedown of phase 4. So we'll get all that worked out. But we are under contract to buy it.
But that would, they still could sell it. I'm just trying to address to our group that it could potentially, I'm in complete agreement, but it just, I just want to make sure we're addressing it in our best way possible, that we could potentially be putting a hardship on a different developer if they were required to fill in those inclusionary housing units.
Just on that point, which is a very good point, this is something we're going to look into now.
Okay.
And the fact that the owner of phase 1 is the owner of phase 4 is actually very good in this situation, because if phase 1 didn't meet this rule, they're the owner of 4, so they're the one impacted, and it may affect the land deal. Now, it's highly likely the inclusionary units are provided and everything is fine, but as we've discussed it here, I think we're in a good position to be able to go and confirm it, and we would have the ability under just the standard ordinance and the specific plan to make sure that it's addressed if it's not met.
Question about that, Peter. Could that affect the sale? They have not purchased yet. If you come to find that the first phase does not meet standard.
It would most likely, it would change the land purchase price. Okay. So it would be in his best interest to make sure he, did what he was supposed to do on the apartment site, so.
Sure. Too late, but okay. All right, very good. So we have a motion with the 2 items. Do we have a second? Commissioner Abbey seconds. Okay. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Abbey?
Yes.
Commissioner Davis?
No.
Commissioner Farkas?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Zucker,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lagerquist,
Yes.
Chair Comden.
Yes. All right. Now, let's move on to item number 3, Project 15322, the Permanent Streamlining Ordinance Amendment. Peter's relocating to present.
Thank you, Commission. Give us 1 minute.
Yes, as I'm presenting this item, it's easier to present from here where I can see you as opposed to being off kind of in the corner. So tonight we are proposing an amendment to Division 24, which is our zoning regulations of the municipal code. This is related to streamlining. And in December of 2021, Council adopted the streamlining ordinance that modified the roles and processes of the development process. And as a city in the coastal zone, those regulations do not become applicable in the coastal zone until the local coastal plan is amended by the Coastal Commission. Next slide, please. Optimally, the city would update its LCP shortly after any ordinance is updated in order to keep the LCP up to date. And the diagram above is an illustrative diagram showing optimally how that would work. So in Ventura in 1971, there was a major zoning ordinance overhaul. It used to be a different division. It moved into Division 24. So if you look through our ordinance, you'll see so many of the regulations are actually from 1971. At that time, the LCP implementation plan, which is the zoning in the coastal zone, was updated. Over time, in 2000, there was a procedural zoning ordinance amendment about design review. Optimally, an LCP amendment would have been done at that time. 2005, there was another amendment. 2012, there was another amendment. There was actually more than this, but just for diagrammatic purposes, I'm showing 3. If that had happened, then when you get to 2021, when streamlining is adopted, the LCP amendment for streamlining gets to be just that. Now that's the optimal situation. Unfortunately, what actually happened was in 1971, yes, major LCP amendment done, but for several process-related zoning ordinance amendments between 2000 and even 2019, the LCP was not amended. That means that the 2021 streamlining ordinance that Council adopted and authorized staff to apply for an LCP amendment to update the LCP, that amendment now has to include parts of all those prior ordinances that we never amended the LCP for. And that is because in 2021, we amended parts of this review process. But as far as the Coastal Commission is concerned, some of the parts we amended, they hadn't seen before. So instead of the 2021 LCP amendment being just what the Planning Commission and Council saw in 2021, that LCP amendment grows into, well, we need to take the one from 2012, we need to take the one from 2005 and 2000, and Coastal Commission staff has to go through all of those and review those. And they give comments on whether or not they think it's appropriate or not. Now, procedural things they're not likely to have concerns with, as long as the coastal development permits that are required in the Coastal Act still happen. They don't really have concern about which body approves what, but it's still effectively what would have been maybe 100 pages of work for just the 2021 project. It's likely going to be 1,000 pages of material that the Coastal Commission and our staff have to go through in that application. So next slide. So needless to say, getting the streamlining regulations to apply in the coastal zone is going to take a lot longer than we thought. So because Council, when they adopted it and they authorized us to apply for an LCP amendment, their intent and desire was to have the same rules for process in the coastal zone as for the rest of the city. Because of what happened in the past, that doesn't look like it's going to be possible to do quickly. We were able to get by because the emergency streamlining ordinance was still in effect until just about a week ago. And so we were using the emergency streamlining ordinance to apply the 2021 ordinance in the coastal zone. But now that is no longer in effect, and we had a meeting with the Coastal Commission, a multi-department meeting, including the city manager's office, our city attorney's office, and community development, where we talked through how do we get the council's intent of having one process in the city, how do we make that happen? The Coastal Commission's recommendation was apply for an LCP amendment that is just the streamlining information. So instead of the 2021 ordinance, which amended, had amendments in this section and that section and that section, put it all together into one thing, make that your LCP amendment while we work on the larger process later. So for lack of better terms, on the slide I'm calling it a patch. What you have before you is basically the summary, in some cases, copy and pasted text of the 2021 amendment, but instead of it being spread across all of Division 24, it's going to be put in one new section. So now the LCP amendment, if this is approved, the LCP amendment gets to be an 8-page document that the Coastal Commission is reviewing as opposed to 1,000. We would still work on the other amendments because we do want to get our LCP zoning regulations to line up as much with what council has adopted as possible. But with this patch, we will no longer have a time constraint over this, and it can be as Coastal Commission is and our own staff is able to process it. So, that is basically what is before you. As written in the staff report, the ordinance before you replicates what the 2021 streamlining ordinance has. There is one thing that is different that's called out in the staff report, and that is a clarification that a project that requires a coastal development permit in the coastal zone, outside the coastal zone, it requires a PD permit. That is relevant in that we have amended our fees in a manner that the interdepartmental part of a project review is now the plan development permit, not the design review permit. We have some zoning districts that say that a project to build a apartment building in some certain zoning districts only needs design review. In order to have the fees work out right, we want those to have a plan development permit and a design review permit so that the water department that has to review it gets compensation, public works, and so on. So that is a change, but that is something that is very much in the city's best interest to make sure that the departments involved in development review are getting the time they spend properly paid for. Beyond that, as I said, everything in the ordinance that you have is taken out of the 2021 ordinance. And next slide. We ask that the Planning Commission make a recommendation to council. Our recommendation is to recommend adoption, but even if the Planning Commission decides not to want to adopt it, we just ask for a recommendation at this hearing. And in the meantime, Community Development and the Attorney's Office does still need to coordinate on how applications are going to be handled in this interim, because it's not going to be as straightforward as we would like, but that is something we're going to be working out, and we'll report back to the Planning Commission at a future date. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Peter. We'll open it up to commissioner questions now. Commissioner Abbey.
Thank you, Chair Comden. Peter, I asked a staff member earlier, but I just wanted to get it directly from you, the information as well. Does this change, or this patch, or this LCPIP amendment, does it in any way change what has already been approved for the non-coastal zone?
As I said, the only change is that nuance about the PD permit based on the fee thing. All the other aspects of the things that are going to DRC, going to HPC, going to PC and such, all those are exactly the same as what was in the 2021 ordinance that council adopted.
Okay, so thank you. Aside from that one change, everything that was approved by Planning Commission and then, well, not by Planning Commission, but whatever was accepted and approved by City Council, what you're saying, except for this PD amendment, everything that applies, the intent is that everything applies outside of the coastal zone would now apply to the coastal zone.
Yes, yes. Now that will happen once the coastal zone completes their action on the LCP amendment. So there will be a time frame where between now and that, but yes, that is the intent. And it is important to note, the noticing that we added as part of streamlining is also part of what's in the package as well, about the courtesy notices and such.
Now, I noticed there was normally noticing is 300 feet, but I saw something in there regarding 1,000 feet. What does that apply to?
Yes, in the coastal zone, the noticing is required to be 1,000 feet to all tenants. That was put in to reassure the Coastal Commission that this amendment is not in any way trying to change what would otherwise be done in the coastal zone. So it is a little interesting. In the coastal zone, notices to owners is 300 feet. Notices to tenants is 1,000.
Okay, thank you.
That's curious. Any other questions for staff or Peter? Commissioner Davis.
I'm not sure if it's a question or just, I saw a couple typos. Do we say that now or in the resolution?
Please do, please.
I don't know, I'm not usually the one that notices them, but I did this time and was like super proud that I actually caught them. It was on the resolution in the first section, it says, or no, it's the second section, it says to submit the local coast program, and I think that's coastal, right? And then there was at A3, where was it at A3? Where did I see? It was B.
I see that, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that was in the actual streamlining. Yeah.
Page 1 of the amendment, yeah.
Yeah. You caught them all. Those were the only ones that I caught, but you probably caught more.
Yes, Commissioner McCarty.
I caught one other. Page 3 of the amendment, at the very bottom, it's paragraph C, as in Charlie, historic design review. Development on a property within or immediately adjacent to in a designated historic district. And then it goes on alterations or additions to on a property. There's a couple instances of consecutive prepositions there. So in the first sentence, it says adjacent to in. I'd suggest delete the word in. And later in that sentence, additions to on. I'd suggest delete the word on.
Yes.
Other than that, I agree with the intent and the output of the amendment itself that you and staff put together.
Commissioner Farkas, followed by Commissioner Zucker.
So Peter, as far as timing goes, I know that you want to get this in and done, and I totally understand why, so that we are consistent. But timing on doing the rest, is that something that is going to be pushed through 6 months, a year? Or are you going to potentially wait until the general plan's done, just in case it has to be completely overhauled?
Are you asking about the timing for the more comprehensive, larger one?
Correct.
That hasn't been decided yet. Part of it is going to be based on how the Coastal Commission responds to this amendment. There is good rationale behind if we believe other amendments might be coming shortly and this can carry us through, then maybe we don't go through that effort. But it's something we're gonna decide, because a preview of the next item we're gonna have, there's a laundry list of things we're working on. And if we've got something that's working, even if it's this patch, putting off that other LCP amendment until there's more to go with it lets us do other things.
And do you have enough staff for all of this?
We will continue to get as much done as possible with the resources we have.
Okay, okay, thank you.
If you're offering more staff, we'll take it.
Well, I guess the question is you have the availability and the budget to have additional staff, or are you still just looking for people? Because I know it's been a challenge after COVID with finding people for all kinds of jobs, so.
We are asking for additional staff resources within the Community Development Department with this budget, which we believe we are going to receive. It's going to be for our housing division to address the next topic. There was no new staff coming into the planning division, which would be handling this part of it. We do have a couple of vacancies still in the planning division that we do need to fill, and some staff onboarding in the next couple of months. So we are filling out the bench to help, which I think will tremendously help. The other part to maybe elaborate on Peter's point is we are only allowed 3 LCP amendments a year through the Coastal Commission. We have a slew of things that are going to require LCP amendments, so we are also trying to strategically think through what are the most pressing things and kind of the next 2-3 year plan of LCP amendments to roll through with the Coastal Commission. Ventura Water Pure, which is a major project, is going to need it, a variety of others. So we're just trying to strategically planning in context.
And the general plan's probably
General
gonna
plan,
throw much more into it, so.
Short-term vacation rentals, accessory dwelling units, there are quite a lot.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I'm taking Peter's thunder for the next one. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I started it.
Commissioner Zucker.
Short but dumb question. Peter, you mentioned earlier that did you say that the city council did or didn't accept the planning commission recommendation?
The council adopted, I'll have to go back and check. When I first answered, it was, my recollection was the council adopted the staff recommendation, not necessarily the planning commission changes. But since then, and just even as asked questions, I have to confirm that. So let me get back to you on that, because there may have been some changes.
All right, Commissioner Davis.
You said on projects that are in, so projects that will be coming forward now that are in the coastal area will be what, under the old rules, pre-streamlining you're looking at what to do about them because they won't qualify under this patch, right?
I wish I had the answer to that. As the slide showed, there's been a number of ordinance amendments to our processes that were never taken through the LCP amendment. I cannot say that the processes before streamlining should have been being done that way because the LCP might not have been amended for it. So don't know exactly what's going to happen. I do know that there's also going to be conflicts then between other parts of the ordinance. We will be talking about it, and we will be giving all parties, the Planning Commission, the other boards, our local development community, and such, are all going to be interested in, like, what is that process going to be? Optimally, we will find a way to go through all the layers of what was adopted in the LCP and not to be able to figure out a clear process that works in the meantime. For projects that are like just starting, the expectation is, the hope is that this patch gets adopted by the Coastal Commission by maybe end of August. So if someone is just starting a major project, then they're not going to notice it. It's really the people who are in the process now. And at this point, our position is that if something already went through DRC while streamlining was in place and they're a recommending body, we would just move those forward because they met the rules at the time that those hearings existed. The questions will be if something hasn't gone to DRC, how are those going to be handled?
Other comments or questions? Oh, okay, Vice Chair.
It's not entirely clear to me, like, so we're adopting an ordinance for the city to allow an amendment to the LCP? Is that, I'm just trying to understand exactly what we're doing here.
Yes, LCP amendments can only be the form of an ordinance to Division 24. So we have to basically adopt something to put in our ordinance that admittedly, once we get this all cleaned up, we'll probably take out in order to get something in place in the short term.
Which leads me to a second question. Is there an end date to this amendment, or are we leaving it open-ended?
We aren't proposing one.
Okay. And then my last question is a little more of a generic question, but how did we get here? Like, how did this happen in the sense all these amendments 2005 and 2009 and that they weren't presented into the, like, I'm just trying to understand, because it seems like such a heavy lift, and so what has the Coastal Commission been doing? They have their own set of plans that don't meet the city's plan? Like, I'm very confused about that.
Yeah, the fault, if you will, is not with the Coastal Commission. The Coastal Commission takes in LCP amendments that whatever jurisdiction applies for and goes through it. We don't know why it didn't happen. It could have been staffing levels, it could have been workloads, it could have been a variety of things. We do know that cities that are not in the coastal zone have a much easier time dealing with their regulations because the council is it. And so it's an added layer. We can only speculate why it happened the way it did.
Okay, Peter, so the Coastal Commission recommended this patch? It was they who recommended it as a interim stopgap?
They recommended coming forth with something that could be a short LCP amendment that didn't change numerous sections of the ordinance. This one's going to add a new single section, which means the fact that these other ordinances happened in 2010 and so on don't matter because we're creating a new thing to put in. We're not changing old things that they haven't seen the prior version. So yes, it was their encouragement of if the city's goal is to get to have the same process apply in both areas, their direction was to take this route.
Okay. Do you see any potential for jeopardy to the city or future applicants by us just having this stopgap patch as opposed to a full-fledged LPC agreement with all parties?
No, because this will be adopted as an ordinance, and therefore it will have all the legal force of the 2021. Once the LCP is amended, this 8-page section will be in the LCP, and it has a line that says anything about the process that is contrary in the rest of the document is superseded by this section. So is it clean? No, but is it legal? Our city attorney's office and their attorneys are comfortable with that.
Okay, very good. Anything else, commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Abbey.
So we'll probably be going to a vote soon?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we do still have the public comment in case there are any members of the public.
Okay, very good. No further questions of staff? Okay, very good. I'd like to open the hearing to the public. Do we have any speakers on this topic? Madam
We
Clerk?
do. We have one public speaker who is joining us via WebEx.
Okay, very
Brian
good.
Pendleton. I'm going to go ahead and bring him up now. Brian, I sent a request for you to unmute. Hold on one moment. Let's try one more time. I can hear you, but it's not loud. It's not coming through the speakers in council chambers. Give me one moment.
Looks like Brian is sitting by the dock of the bay, isn't he?
He is, isn't he? There's nothing wrong with your audio. We're just not having, we're having issues with our speakers here in council chambers. Can anybody hear when he speaks? Yeah, we can try that. Okay, go ahead and speak, Brian. Not yet, one moment.
Maybe we could just ask him to yell.
Or he could call in if there is a phone in line and that could be put up to a microphone.
It's not connected. This is not on. No, this one's not on. It's not going. Nope. No laptop. Can he say it to you and you repeat it out through your mic? Of course. All right, Brian, we're going to try you speaking and me repeating what you say into the microphone. So we have it for public record and for those of us in council chambers. Brian Pendleton submitted written comment this afternoon in support of staff's recommendation. Go ahead, Brian. Streamlining has been a council goal for several years, as evidenced by, sorry, repeat that, Brian. Their recent decision on December 6th. The harbor lies within the coastal zone. Small businesses, which are mostly family owned. I apologize. Can you repeat that? That quieted down a bit and I was unable to hear you. Reverting back to the previous, reverting back to prior to streamlining would negatively affect those businesses when they go to pull permits. During the ESO, okay, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to repeat that. During ESO, Peter Gilly and his team presented a high level of expertise. Say that one more time. For quality development, while processing projects for greater efficiency. Recommended action seeks to align the coastal zone with the ESO, and the permanent streamlining ordinance. I urge the support of staff's recommendation by the Planning Commission. No worries, it's on our end. Thank you, Brian.
And just as a FYI for the commission, the snafu is in this room. If someone's actually watching, the webcasting, they heard Brian much better than we did. So we will definitely work on that.
All right, very good. That concludes the public speakers for this particular topic. Madam Clerk?
One moment, I've got someone who's asking a question, but they need to, because this isn't a question and answer forum, I'm just asking if they'd like to speak.
Stand by, everyone.
All right, I believe we can move on.
All right, very good. I'm going to close the public hearing, bring it back to the commissioners. Any comments? Yes, Commissioner Abbey. Hold that thought. I'm going to reopen the hearing to public comment.
All right, so I've got Terry Foley. I'm going to go ahead and make your presenter. I'm not sure if this will work with our system. I may have to do a translation like we did last time. All right, Mr. Foley, you can go ahead and unmute. All right, we're not going to be able to hear you. I can translate what you have to say to the others in the room if you'd like. Okay, say that one more time. The community council has concerns regarding. Okay, I'm sorry, sir, I cannot hear you.
I believe what the speaker said, because we're getting on this computer, is the concern that the 3 LCP amendments that can be done, and not wanting to put words in Mr. Foley's mouth, the concern that this could, and Mr. Foley, please let me know if I get this wrong, concern that we would not be able to do STVRs if we used up our applications.
He says that's exactly right.
Okay, so given the weird circumstance, can I try to explain what I think Mr. Foley would have said?
Please do, Peter.
So the Pierpont Association and Community Council wants to have an amendment to the STVR ordinances. That may require an LCP amendment, most likely will. And so the concern is don't use up too many of our LCP amendments And because we have not actually applied for the big LCP amendment for streamlining, this will not preclude us from being able to do the STVR one.
Okay. So does Mr. Foley have any other comments, or is he finished communicating?
Mr. Foley's comments have been concluded.
Okay, very good. So I'm going to close the public hearing now.
Thank you.
Peter, do you wish to continue on that train of thought?
No, unless there are any questions.
Okay, I have a question. How many have been applied for to date this year? And is it 3 within a calendar year?
It's 3 within a calendar year. We have 2 applications that council has authorized us to apply for. We have not actually applied for any of those yet. And there is the ability to combine. So the expectation, and just for clarity, one of them is the commercial cannabis ordinance. The other is streamlining. The intent is to use one of them for this patch. We certainly would not be using another one for the big streamlining this calendar year. And we are seeking to keep one available for Ventura Water Pure, because that's a significant project. And as I said, we still do have the ability to combine things together into one application. So we have some flexibility, but we're being very conscious of not putting ourselves in a position to not have any left. The STVR ordinance is a council goal from a prior year that is continued over, so it would get top billing on the list of 3.
What about the water pure? Is that likely to occur this year?
We believe it will.
Okay. So I guess I have a question as to what you would suggest. Are you aware of this particular community council's efforts to bring something forward?
Yes.
And how eminent is that?
The goal would be to have a new ordinance this calendar year. And so the plan will be to look at does the STVR and maybe Ventura Water Pure application kind of happen at the same time? If so, we'd combine. If not, we would have Ventura Water Pure go on its own. Mm-hmm. We still have that 3rd spot, and that if STVR is ready, that could take it, as well as anything else we can combine with that at that point.
Right. I mean, Ventura Water Pure is pretty important.
Yes.
Perhaps you could set a date determined in the future where the 3rd one, if you plan to be submitting this year, do it by this date so that we can combine them and get your plan in. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Abbey.
Yeah, I have comments. Let's see. So I wanted to confirm, you just said it. So basically, Mr. Gilly, this calendar year, you expect that the STVR, at least as far as it goes with Pierpont, is on the calendar for this year?
The challenge right now with the STVR ordinance is we did an RFP for the work, and we did not get any responses. And so the goal is to have it done this year. We are going to be brainstorming, and in fact, I'm going to be having a conversation with Mr. Foley in the near future on brainstorming how do we get something moving forward.
Okay. All right. I just want to make some comments. I had some reservations about the permanent streamlining ordinance when it was proposed. I still have those concerns and reservations. I think one of the things that hasn't been obvious, and it seems like one of the perhaps bigger problem is the permit desk at community development, and streamlining the permit desk. That seems to be the bigger problem from what I hear, as opposed to necessarily what was approved in the streamlining ordinance. That said, City Council has spoken. They've spoken on a unanimous basis. They wanted permanent streamlining ordinance. Who am I to get in the way of that? And also, because it's already been approved for the non-coastal zone, it would not make sense to have a different policy in the coastal zone, and we need a unitary policy. So with reservations, I will be supporting this motion tonight.
All right, any other comments? Commissioner Zucker.
I can talk loud. I just want to say thank you to Peter and the staff for cleaning up what seems to be the mess of past administrations. So appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion on this? Commissioner McCarty, do we have a second?
I was going to make the motion to accept as recommended.
As recommended, very good.
I'll second.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Davis?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Can I ask the maker of the motion that you include to make the adjustments to typos?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, first and second. Any discussion? All right, Madam Clerk, would you take the roll, please?
Yes. Commissioner Abbey?
Yes.
Commissioner Davis?
Yes.
Commissioner Farkas?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Zucker?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lagerquist?
Yes.
Chair Comden?
Yes. Thank you, everyone. If you'd like. Voila. Our screens are turned off, just FYI. Yeah. Let's keep going before the lights go out, shall we? The next item is an informational item. It's the 2021 through 29 housing element update. Peter, you ready?
Yes.
Go.
So this is an update on the housing element, but also a little broader than that, just housing initiatives and efforts moving forward. Next slide. So starting off, the council made implementing the housing element a goal of this year. They adopted the housing element in January. They also made it a goal to look into securing a pro-housing designation from the state. We can come back at a future date with more details about what that means. But it's what the state offers that cities that have enough points that are pro-housing related, that then allows any applicant, whether the city or affordable housing provider, to get extra points in their applications for state funding. So it would be a very beneficial thing if we were able to get that designation. Council wants us to look into doing that. So at the high level, there's a lot of council support for the topic of housing. That is coming into implementation through the upcoming budget. Council has had a preview of the budget, and there is additional staffing and resources for housing in that. We're creating a new division in the department called Housing Services. Currently, our housing team is made up of 3 staff that are just part of our administration group. So they're going to be their own group. We're going to hire a housing services manager. That application period for that job actually ends tomorrow, and interviews are planned in early June. So this person is going to lead that group. Primary goal is to implement the housing element. That position, or the team, is going to be expanded from 3 to 6 people. 1 is an actual new position, and 2 are reallocated vacant positions from elsewhere in the city manager's office and from our department. Part of this change is also the management of the homelessness program is going to return to community development. The homelessness program is part of the housing element. It's part of state law that we address the issue. And so having the management of that function be in the department does make sense. That particular program is going to continue to be an interdepartmental approach, heavily reliant on Parks and Rec, as well as the police department as well. In addition to more staff resources, the upcoming budget has over $400,000 in one-time funding proposed for the next fiscal year. This will be used for consultant support in the implementation efforts, which I'm going to talk about more. In general, it's going to take some time to get the staffing completely filled up. So this first year of housing element implementation, we are going to rely more on consultant support for a lot of the work and the creation of the programs, which is why there's the larger number. We do expect there will still be budgeted funds for consultant support in future years, but as I said, as the staffing starts to get more filled up, the consultant support will start to decrease. Next slide. So a very important part of the housing element is we added the language that clearly specified that the oversight of implementation was with the Planning Commission. Arguably, the zoning ordinance already says that the Planning Commission has a lead role on general plan implementation. Housing element's part of the general plan, but we wanted to make it extremely clear to all parties involved that the housing element calls for the Planning Commission to be the lead on oversight. For things like ordinances and such, those will still be a recommendation you make to council, but all of the policy material is going to come to the Planning Commission. Now, for the housing element update itself, as I mentioned, council adopted it in late January. We sent the adopted document to HCD for review. In April, I think about a month ago today, we received a response letter. While the housing element they found meets a lot of the state statutory requirements, we do need to make additional revisions to fully comply. That is, staff's not necessarily concerned with that because that is actually the norm. Very few cities are able to get their housing element approved on the second round. This was actually our second round of sending it to HCD. Based on the HCD website, there's not a single city in Ventura County that has a certified housing element. And in Los Angeles County, our neighbor, they have 88 cities. They have 4 cities that have a certified housing element. For those who, I've heard some concerns about the consultant we have. Just as an FYI, of the 4 cities in LA County that have a certified element, 2 had our consultant. So 50% of the certified elements in basically this region, our consultant was a part of. So staff, we feel good about it. I know some people, particularly the news media, if a housing element isn't certified the first time, they say it's rejected. It's fine if you want to view it that way. We don't view it that way. We view it as we need to make some amendments, and we will resubmit. I was on a call with HCD, with our consultant, and the feedback is they support what's in it. There are more commitments we have to make on issues, more details, more milestones they want us to put in the document. So it's not a case that they're saying anything we proposed they don't like. They do. They want more. That's not uncommon. We will be working on doing that. A big aspect of the where they want more expansion of commitments is on the topic of affirmatively furthering fair housing. And this is the first housing element cycle that has this in the document, which is one of the reasons why most of the cities are not able to get it through on the first couple rounds. Just at a very high level, the state wants us to put a lot more attention towards how to get more affordable units in higher resource areas and how to get more investment and improvements in lower resource areas. The state has maps, and we had copies of them in our housing element document that show what census tracts of the city are higher resource, and by higher resource, it means they have higher scores in environmental issues, education issues, economic issues, and housing costs. The lower resource areas have lower scores. They don't have as much on the education. They have more environmental impacts, what's around them, and so on and so forth. So the state wants us to take more active steps to improve the lower resource areas and to get more affordable units, as I said, into the higher. We have two areas, two census tracts, well, two areas of the city that we need to give the most attention to. One is West Side. There are two census tracts in the West Side. Those are both in the lower resource areas. Everywhere else in the city, every other tract is actually in the moderate or higher. Then we also have our downtown, which is in a special category of its own, not a good one, high segregation and poverty census tract. So that's, for lack of better terms, worse than being a lower resource area. So a lot of attention will need to be given to those parts of the city. Just stay, I think, from, as I said, from our perspective, we actually think we're in a good position. We would much rather have a certified housing element now, but based on the call, my estimate is we'll have to maybe modify or expand 5% of the document, not a lot of it. I do believe that we are going to end up coming forth with more objectives. And one of the things I said when the housing element came to Planning Commission last time is, to us, the objectives are the most important part. I know a lot of people like to talk about the map and where the units are going to go, but the objectives are, that's what the city is going to do about housing. So those are the programs and such. I believe we're going to have to add more objectives, and thus these changes aren't just administrative changes. So we do anticipate we're going to bring the housing element back to the Planning Commission and then to City Council to have it readopted. The dates, we don't know. We are planning, because HCD supports what we propose, we are planning to move forward with housing element implementation at the same time as we are working on getting the document fully certified. So we're not pausing to do one thing at the expense of the other. Next slide. So this is a laundry list of major initiatives our department's working on. There are a lot of them. Optimally, a city would not try to be doing as many of these things at one time. For a variety of reasons, it's very important that we make progress on all of these. It's a tremendous impact on staff in multiple departments. The housing element in particular, I've highlighted. There are the aspects that there's more than this in the housing element, but these are kind of some of the highlights. The additional staffing we're bringing on is going to assist with this. Also, the fact that the housing group is going to be assigned with doing most of the ordinance updates, including updating ordinances to catch up to state law. That in itself is going to lift a burden off the planning group. So while this, the staffing strategy isn't necessarily adding staff to planning, we're adjusting the workloads and such, so they will have less on their plate to be able to get through many of the other things. With that, we are confident that we are going to be able to make good progress on housing element implementation, achieve the programs that we're talking about. Each one of these is going to be its own item. As I said, our plan is to bring in experts in each of these topic areas to provide background to the Planning Commission on what the issues are, what the options are. So just in comparison, whereas streamlining was something staff kind of wrote based on our experience of what we think the process could be more streamlined with, these are going to be very different. These are going to be much more engagement up front, much more Planning Commission driven, and giving the Planning Commission all the background and details so that what is put together is from the Planning Commission's end. Also, as each one of them, we're going to have conversations with the Planning Commission about scope and how to approach, do we start with a workshop at Planning Commission? When do we start to engage the community and such? I don't anticipate any of these items are going to follow exactly the same path because each issue is going to vary a lot. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity to make processes that make the most sense. For just a minor update, there's a form-based code overlay that is in the works. That is something that we have a state deadline on, so it is going to move a little faster. The overlay is going to be used to apply to the sites the housing element was going to rezone. Most of those are on the Johnson corridor, and I believe there's like one church across from the college. So that's going to move forward. The inclusionary housing ordinance has already started. There are a variety of reasons it is not ready to come back to Planning Commission yet, but as soon as the updated information is provided, it is going to come back to the Planning Commission. On accessory dwelling units, one of the housing element objectives is not just the ordinance, but what incentives are we going to develop as a community to get people to want to do ADUs. There's additional streamlining efforts, and I'm just using the term streamlining because we've used it before. There's additional efforts the state wants us to look at our processes and how do we make them so that a housing project is able to get through in faster timeframes. There's the Planning Commission recommendation to look at the topic of heavy industrial near housing. That goes directly to affirmatively furthering fair housing. So while it may not be an objective listed in the housing element itself at this time, because Planning Commission already authorized it to start and Council did as well, we may actually add it in this update. We're already doing it. Just as the FYI, that is do we look at certain categories of heavy industrial, high polluting industrial to say is not allowed to go in near housing. The council direction was to look at new. So the general plan might look at broader, and as people have been involved in that topic may be broader, but for housing element, we're looking at new. The tenant protection ordinance, the council just had a very long meeting on Monday about some aspects of tenant protection, just kind of like one sliver of it. In 2023, that's going to be a major topic for the Planning Commission. Another major topic is putting together a homelessness program. Right now, we are somewhat operating ad hoc. There is not truly a council-adopted policy on what the city is doing. We do have a shelter, we have programs, we have staffing and such. So while that's not going to be next calendar year, it's still, I think, a very big deal. So I put it on this list with the caveat of it's 2024, not 2023. There's twice as many things in the housing element for next year. I didn't list them all, but just wanted to give that feedback. There's another suggestion I would give with this context. There's a lot to do, and strategically as we go through it, I encourage the Planning Commission to think about some of these areas across the board. There's great need for us to make progress on. Sometimes there's the efficiency of how much do we spend to get something to be perfect versus how do we make good improvements to as many of these things as possible, knowing we can always come back and take something that we bring up to maybe 80% and spend extra time later and bring it up to 90 or 95% and such. So it's just a caveat because from the staffing perspective, as the staff has kind of hinted at it, as you have said as well, there's a lot to do, and we don't think anything can be actually paused. We think everything does need to be done, and The construction permitting process is up there. And there's actually going to be an informational item for council on, I think, June 27th. I encourage you to look at that. We have no question, and we will freely state that when COVID hit and we went digital without all the systems in place, it was not a great process. It was not a good process. We have launched the new system. We are working through the kinks. We have data that is showing that we have turned a corner. We are not saying it's where it needs to be, but we're definitely getting much closer. And so that's positive. We fully recognize the way it was before was way too long to get through the process, but we're very excited that we're on track now. So anyway, that's an update on where we are, particularly with housing, how it fits into other things. We do not need an action. If you have any questions about housing, happy to try to answer them. Admittedly, on a lot of these things, we don't know the answers yet, but we will try.
Thank you, Peter. Could I ask that this slide be sent to all commissioners? I don't think we've seen this before, and it's a good summary of the many things that are on your plate. Questions? Yes, Commissioner Farkas.
We took a good look at the inclusionary housing ordinance this year. Is that something we're going to see this year?
Yes, yeah. The goal was that it would come back this month. When Planning Commission last saw it and asked for more information, the hope was it could come back this month. Because the work required an expansion of the scope for more studies, it just couldn't be put together fast enough. So yes, the intent is still that it comes as quickly as it can. My hope is it's this summer, but at this point we don't have an exact date.
And then anticipated from that list, we will see some of those items this year, or is it you looking at 2023 for most of them?
I expect from that list, taking out the homelessness program, which is clearly 2024, there's a very high chance you're going to see maybe just the first introductory intro to a topic, but I would say you're going to see pretty much everything on that list at some point this calendar year.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Zucker.
To ask for some more examples, Peter, it's a helpful example around the kind of industrial neo-residential, around the kind of what would, say, more investments in low resource areas look like, also around the how do we get more affordable housing in high resource areas. Certainly interested in what that could mean. I know it's hard to speculate, and it's our job to make some of that policy, but do you have any ideas or thoughts on what that might look like?
I can relay what the state has said and what our consultant has said other cities have done. Two very clear ways that the city can do more investment is through either the CDBG program or the CIP. Now, the CIP comes to the Planning Commission, but the way it's done now, it's kind of at the end, and you're making a finding that it complies with the general plan. Well, we now have a new housing element, which is part of the general plan, that calls for affirmatively furthering fair housing. And we've talked to Public Works that the next year for the CIP, it's going to have to be different. Admittedly, we don't exactly know, but I imagine we'll have to have some type of columns in the documents that point out which of the CIP programs programmed for that year are affecting which type of resource areas. The state isn't requiring any particular number. They want us to commit to a certain number in the housing element, I believe. So that's one of the things that is like how to improve investment. There's other type of programs as well that other cities do. We're going to have to really look at what's out there. We also have a very good support group, nonprofit groups in the city that meet on these topics often, and we're going to be really relying on them as well to help.
Great. Actually, I had one more question. I'm curious about kind of some of the staffing challenges in the planning department. And I know, part of it may be around budget constraints, and then part is, as you mentioned, kind of around having positions open that we're struggling to hire for. Just a little anecdotal experience. I was talking with someone who I went to high school with, grew up here in Ventura, went back to school to get actually a planning degree, and wanted to look for jobs. I told him, hey, the city of Ventura's got, we're struggling to get planners. And he said, oh, well, the jobs that are out there are, at city are kind of like, they require a little more experience than I have, and I can't really apply for those. And I was curious. I always think, in my own work, it's always great to like build kind of leadership from the bottom up, especially if it's hard to bring in people already with the experience. Curious if the department's looked at, creating lower level positions like a, kind of permit tech type of thing to start, building skills or people into those positions if we can't find people with the qualifications.
And we have, not just in planning, across the board, there's one of the challenges also that we're dealing with, and council has funded and started a class comp study, is that the compensation package that Ventura staff gets is lower than average in this county. When you get to the more entry-level jobs, that's more noticeable. So there's also that challenge. We did originally start out looking to try to get more experienced people in because of the need, and we did kind of midway start to adjust to looking for more entry-level.
Yeah, we have filled our entry-level positions, so the open recruitments now are for more journeyman level. They are for our senior planners, and soon will be for our principal planners. So the assistant planners and associate planners have been filled, and an assistant planner would be kind of the entry-level planning position.
All right. Part of the compensation plan is the view from City Hall here. Keep that in mind. Peter, you mentioned investment in some of these areas. I haven't heard the term enterprise zone used around here. Can you speak to that, if there's opportunities for us in that way, and how does that work?
I don't have a lot of experience with enterprise zones. There are a lot of tools out there. There are tools that the state has put in place that take some of the aspects of redevelopment that was most beneficial and allow us to still make certain type of districts where tax increment can actually still be used and such. Those will likely all have to be on the table. So everything out there that a city can and has done, we need to start looking at.
Okay. Yep. Questions, comments? All right, thank you very much for this update. There's no action needed here, so let's move to, do you have another comment?
I think there may be members of the public here.
Okay, do we have speakers? Very good. Let's open the meeting to public speakers.
We're going to start with Miguel Rodriguez.
I apologize for not recognizing you. You've waited long to speak.
That's fine. Thank you,
Good morning. Good
commissioners and city staff. Good evening. Again, my name is Miguel Rodriguez, and I grew up in Ventura, actually, and it's kind of ironic that we're having this conversation, because I went to Anacapa Middle School, lived in the apartments off of Telephone Road, now called, they used to be called Turtle Creek, went to Buena High School, I went to VC, graduated from there, and eventually chose my career path to be in community service and community work. And, come to find myself very challenged, right? And eventually priced out of, the ability to be able to afford a house and the ability to even raise a family here in Ventura. So the next best option was obviously to move away. worked a lot during my advocate years and advocating for the creation of Kellogg Park on the Avenue. I helped organize, and we turned out a lot of people to support that effort. And on Monday, there was this hearing here for City Council where, unfortunately, some of the children that we fought to keep the park for, to build the park for, are getting displaced. Whether it's intentionally or accidental, the fact is that children are going homeless because of some of the policies that are happening. And, it's been 5 years ago, probably, that I was in the Blue Ribbon Committee to preserve the inclusionary housing ordinance, no? And just to think that we're still dealing with these issues so many years later, and I'm here to support the housing element and the full implementation of it. It needs to result in the creation of affordable housing for our community so that people like those children that we fought for the park for don't get displaced, right? Additionally, I think that the housing services manager position should ideally profile a local resident with recent renter experience to help frame the issues for those who are currently dealing with the Ventura rental housing market. Again, please support the housing element and its implementation and pursue tenant protections in your policies and recommendations. And remember also that, the stuff that you do needs to have a greater vision, that when we are able to defeat the SoCal gas plant, right, that there's going to be that land available, that we're able to maintain it so that no more residents are displaced, right, so that there isn't a predatory developer that is going to advertise beach house or beachfront property or riverfront property that is going to further displace the folks that live in that community. So with that, I thank you for your time and your effort and your commitment, and I can't say any more than that. Just thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez.
All right, next we have Karen Flock.
Good evening. My name is Karen Flock. I'm the Deputy Director for Real Estate Development with the Housing Authority of the City of San Buenaventura. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Thanks for allowing me to speak. I want to thank Peter Gelly and staff for working with housing advocates to develop a housing element that has some great programs in it. And we really appreciate the effort to prioritize implementation of the housing element. The proof is going to be in the pudding. Are we going to be able to make a dent in our affordable housing problems? We know we have a big problem. I mean, Miguel mentioned it earlier, but I was also at the City Council meeting on Monday night and hearing about the 12 families who are going to be displaced because of basically we don't have enough affordable housing. The City Council was sympathetic, but they ultimately weren't able to do something that would help those tenants. So I think, we're going to have to also be looking more at displacement and gentrification. Addressing our affordable housing problems requires a multifaceted approach. We need more funding. We need all the programs in the housing element. And again, I appreciate that the city's making a commitment to do this. I want to make a couple of comments since we're talking about housing to speak on or just address some of the issues that came up in the Del Sol project. Kind of brought back some memories for me, and I guess it was 2009, I advocated for better inclusionary provisions in the Parklands project, and it's unfortunate it didn't happen, but I appreciate your putting some attention to that tonight. And vinyl windows, I did want to talk about them a bit. They are environmentally bad, but they are more cost effective. I know we use them in all of our projects, and I think they're probably more important environmental issues to focus on, reducing greenhouse gases, moving towards and facilitating net zero energy, and going all electric in our housing. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flock.
Judy?
Good evening. I'm Judy Alexander, and I am a resident of Ventura. The East End, considered a high resident zone, high resource area with absolutely no amenities. Very, very, very few. So as you are charged with the great job of needing to increase affordable housing in high income areas and high resource areas, one of the things that will need to be considered is how do you also increase the needed services for the people that are living on the East End for the development of the farm that you're just putting in. The East End has no grocery store, just as an example. So there are several things that you'll need to consider as you make those decisions. The other, and most important, is I too was here Monday night and was saddened because the lack of affordable housing in this community is causing the dislocation of 33 people. The lack of affordable housing is creating more homelessness. I've worked with homelessness now for almost, hate to say it, 40 years. And in working with the issue and trying to solve and resolve, the growing population of homelessness currently are seniors. Secondly, it is youth. Third, it is families. It is not the lazy bum on the street. We are talking about people who have lived here their whole lives, who have limited incomes. And we must do something about the affordability and the very needed low-income affordability of housing. Our schools are declining because we really don't have employment and because we really don't have housing where young families can live. My landlord, I own my house, but next door and across the street are rentals. Original owners are now charging an outrageous amount of money for income for homes they've owned outright for years. We need to do something about the rent stability if we're going to keep people and families in the area. So we need jobs, we need housing, we need to support our schools. And as a long-term advocate, I want to thank Peter and his outreach to us. He's done an incredibly wonderful job of reaching out, listening, and working with us as advocates and trying to plan a program that works for the best of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. Do we have any other speakers?
We do. We have one speaker joining us through WebEx. I've adjusted a couple settings. We're going to try some things.
All right.
All right, Trevor Gottsman, I'm making you a panelist. You may go ahead and unmute, and we'll give this a try. Give me one moment.
Otherwise, I will.
Keep going. We can hear you well enough.
She's getting there. This is practice. Thank you for bearing with us. We're just the techies of it.
Yes, your sound. The sound is working. You can go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. Commissioners, thank you all for your incredible amount of service and dedication you put in. You need to teach us all how to apply ourselves the same way as we do with all the other responsibility. That's how we get the job done for all the qualities that the city to apply to our wonderful government. It's all about our owners, doing those
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Gottsman. All right. Any other speakers? Very good. We will close the public hearing. And we'll move on to staff communication.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. I'm hearing myself double. Just for the upcoming hearing in June, we will be canceling the first meeting of the Planning Commission on June 8th, I believe it is, and we will let you know if there will be a agenda item and a hearing for the second meeting in June, but we will not be holding the first meeting in June. Just a couple of quick updates on some projects that have gone through DRC and that will be coming to Planning Commission in the coming months. The DRC did review the Front and Calorama project, which is a mixed-use building on the corner of Front and Calorama. The DRC did provide recommendations. The applicant is making some design adjustments to the building, and then we will be coming to Planning Commission for action on that. And then also another mixed-use project on Thompson called Pacific Wave is making some minor adjustments that will then be coming to Planning Commission for consideration and action on that as well. The DRC has asked for the staff to give an update on what recommendations or considerations they make that are and aren't incorporated into the project. So we will report back about the vinyl windows, and just clarification: if the DRC does make a recommendation or a consideration, we will put that into a condition of approval if they have not adjusted the project accordingly. And then we do let the applicant know if they are not agreeable to those, that they can have the discussion here at Planning Commission. So if it's a consideration or a direct recommendation, that is how staff handles them, and so why you see them as conditions of approval. And we will be clear if it was a consideration or a direct recommendation so that you're aware of that. Some of the applicants do choose to make the modifications before it comes to Planning Commission. Again, we give them that choice and that ability. If they do make those modifications before hearing, it doesn't show up as a condition of approval, it just shows up as the modified plans. So just to clarify that process moving forward, when Pacific Wave and Front and Calorama come forward, some of those recommendations the DRC made will be in the design already and will not show up as a condition of approval. And we'll again clarify at that meeting what was modified and so on and so forth. With that, that's all staff has this evening.
Thank you, Netta. Any questions for staff as we go out? Any comments or announcements that commissioners would like to make? All right, I do have a question. I noticed that there's a lot of vacancies on boards and commissions. It was mentioned earlier, and I want to echo this, that there isn't, for instance, a landscape architect on DRC. What efforts is the city making to try and fill some of those positions? Do we know?
Chair Comden, there are, from my understanding, 22 or 24 vacancies on the various boards and commissions across the city. The city did have open recruitment, which closed at the end of this, or earlier this month. The city clerk is going through all of those applications. From our understanding, there have been applications for the HPC, which does have vacancies, as well as the DRC. They will go through the ARC, which is the appointment committee made up of a subcommittee of council, who will review those and recommend the appointments to city council. So that process is underway right now.
Good. I mean, from a personal note, I haven't seen a lot of visibility on these vacancies. And whether it's an insert in a water bill or something like that, there might be ways to raise awareness of that. And anybody who's watching this online, please step forward if you have an interest in serving. This is a group effort, and the more of us that are involved, the better the solutions. Commissioner Davis.
Netta and Peter did reach out to me as I'm sort of I've been a conduit to share information from the city to the design professionals in Ventura. And we've been doing these meetings where we've been getting updates on the improvements to the permitting process that has happened over the last year. I think we've had maybe 3 or 4 meetings maybe. And they did pass along for me to send that out about the availability of positions. So I did forward that on we have a spreadsheet I have an email list of people. So I did send that out. So that did go out. They reached out to me and I passed it on.
Very good.
So,
Thank you for doing that.
And we did get people from that. And our communications team did also do some social media and advertising. And we did ask the various boards to send things around. So we have seen applications through that. But just for clarity, if there are people in the public who are listening and want to apply, unfortunately, the application period is closed. But we'll bring that up in future meetings when they are open.
Very good. And let us know when that opens. That way commissioners will be ready to speak to others about serving.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Final questions, comments? Okay. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your time tonight.
Yay.